Welcome back everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make crispy pork belly in a charcoal barbecue. Now we've done some pretty amazing pork belly in the past, but in this video, we're going to be doing things a little bit different to get that perfect pork belly. We're going to be drawing some inspiration from my good friend Chris, also known as the smoker, the baker, the ice cream maker. He's massive on other social media platforms, but he's just started a YouTube channel. He's the king of pork belly. I'll put some links down in the description if you want to go check him out. We're going to be following his pork belly preparation process, so let's get stuck into it. All right, so this is super simple. All we've got is some paper towel and we're going to pat the skin dry. Normally I would jaccard or salt it at this stage, but like I said, all we need to do right now is pat that skin dry. As you can see, I've got our pork belly sitting on a cake rack. Then I've also got the cake rack on a cutting board, just so it's going to be easy to lift up and down and it'll catch any juice that drips off our pork belly. So now we've pat our skin dry, we can put this straight into the fridge. All right, so that pork belly is going to go into the fridge uncovered, skin side up for a minimum of 48 hours or a maximum of 4 days. Now I'm planning to cook this one in about 72 hours time. There's still a little bit more preparation that needs to happen before then, so we'll come back once we're ready to do that. All right, so our pork belly has been in the fridge for just over 48 hours. Let's have a look at it. Now, as you can see, that skin has really dried out. The color's got a lot darker. So let's take it over to the table and finish off this prep. All right, so what I can do now is take it off of that cake rack and we'll put it skin side down on our bench. If you've got any excess fat or silver skin underneath, we can trim that off, but this one's pretty good. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make some cuts. I'll only go a couple of centimeters down. You don't want to go through to the skin. We're just going to slice it into cubes. And now we're going to season our pork belly. And what we've done there by slicing it into cubes is all of that flavour is really going to penetrate right into our meat. So grab your favourite seasoning. In our case, we are going to be using some of our steak shooter rub. So we'll give this a nice generous coating. Make sure you get your edges. And if you've got any seasoning on your skin, just brush that off. Now next, you want to get something sharp. You can use the end of your knife and stab lots of holes in it. But to make the job easier, we're going to be using a jaccard. So this has got a bunch of retractable sort of needles. So we're just going to stab our pork belly all over now. Right, and then we can place that back on our cake rack. And if anyone's interested where I got this jaccard, I'll put a link down in the description for you to check out. But for now, we're going to get this back in the fridge. And that's pretty much most of the prep work done. So we're just going to put our pork belly back in the fridge overnight and we'll be back tomorrow once we're ready to cook it. All right, so our pork belly's had a bit over 60 hours of dry time to really get that skin nice and dry, which is going to give us that perfect crackling. It's been back in the fridge overnight since we've seasoned it. So all we need to do now is set our barbecue up and then we can get to cooking. All right, so we'll open our lid, take our cooking grate off, and we're going to be smoking our pork belly first today. So I'm going to set up for a smoke in our slow and sear. So we'll fill our charcoal basket up with some lumped charcoal or briquettes if you've got those. Then we can get a firelighter in there and get it started. All right, so while our charcoal's starting, I've got some smoking wood ready. I've gone with some peach wood from Natural Smoke, but if you've got another favorite smoking wood for pork, feel free to use that. So this is going to be a little bit different to the pork belly videos we've done in the past. There's so many different methods you can use to make crispy pork belly in a charcoal barbecue, but using this method today, you're going to get a nice subtle smoke flavor. We're going to get some beautiful, tender, juicy meat with that perfect crackling. And just to recap, when you're looking for a pork belly, make sure you're going for a skin-on, boneless and unscored pork belly. If you can only get pork belly that's been scored already, it's not the end of the world, but I definitely do prefer unscored pork belly for that beautiful, bubbly, light crackling. So all we need to do now is wait for our charcoal to be ready, then we'll come back to set the rest of this barbecue up. All right, so our charcoal is looking good. That's obviously going to burn from right to left. That'll last about 2 or 3 hours, which will be the perfect amount of time for this cook. So we can get our cooking grate on. We'll shut our lid. Then we'll make sure our top and bottom vents are wide open. Then we'll give our barbecue 5 minutes to preheat. All right, so it's been 5 minutes. We can open our lid up, get our beautiful chunk of smoking wood on. Then I've got a roasting rack here. I'm just going to place that on our cooking grate. Then I'm going to place our pork belly on that. And that way any moisture will run off our pork belly instead of pooling up on it. Then we can shut our lid and let this pork belly smoke away. All right, so now our pork belly's on, I'm gonna look to stabilize our barbecue off at around that 275 Fahrenheit or 135 Celsius range. And I'm gonna let this pork belly go until we reach an internal temperature in the thickest part of the meat of around 185 Fahrenheit or 85 degrees Celsius. I reckon that'll take us about 2 or 3 hours to get there, so we'll come back once we're a bit further into this cook. All right, so we're about an hour in. Let's have a look. That's looking really nice. I don't think you can pick that up on the camera. Hopefully you can. We're starting to get a little bit of crackling formation already, which is a good sign. If we're getting crackling starting to form at smoking temperature, I reckon this is going to absolutely pop later on when we increase the heat. And just to keep it nice and even, I'm just going to rotate our pork belly around, and we'll close our lid back up and let it keep going. All right, we're just over 2 hours into this smoke. Our pork belly is looking amazing. That skin is still super dry. Let's have a check of our internals. We're at about 163 Fahrenheit. 165 there. So I reckon we're only about 20 minutes away from this being at that temperature we spoke about before. So what we'll do is we'll close our lid and we'll get some charcoal on for when we're ready to build this crackling. All right, so it's been 10 minutes, our charcoal's ready, our pork belly's just below that internal temperature we want it to be at, but I'm not concerned about it as that will continue to climb as we build this crackling. I'm gonna be aiming for a final meat internal temperature of around that 200 Fahrenheit or 93-ish degrees Celsius mark. I find that a really nice internal where the meat is really nice and tender, but it's not falling apart. So let's get this charcoal in. I've got one more thing to do to the pork belly, so let's get into it. All right, so we can open our lid up. Take our cooking grate off for a minute. Put our smoking wood down with the charcoal. We'll dump this fresh charcoal in. We'll spread it out nice and even. We'll get our cooking grate back on. Then I usually use oil, but I've got some white vinegar here. That's another great tip that Chris, who I spoke about earlier, uses. So I'm just going to brush a very light coat of white vinegar onto our pork belly skin. Then we can close our lid back up. Then we just want to open our bottom vent right back up. All right, so that pork belly is going to go back in until our crackling's set now. And the beauty of this barbecue is I can see straight through that big vent and see exactly how our pork crackling is coming along. Now, we've already got that beautiful smoke flavor in there from that peach chunk. So if you wanted to take this inside and finish it off in the oven, feel free to do that. And if you're looking for a temperature for this stage of the cook to really build your crackling, I'm going to be looking at around the 500 Fahrenheit or 260 Celsius range. So all I'm going to do now is keep an eye on our crackling. I'm going to spin that pork belly back around if it needs it. If any parts of our crackling are starting to overcook, I'm going to cover them with foil. So I'm just going to let this go and we'll check back in soon. All right, we're almost an hour into this high indirect heat stage to build this crackling. I did rotate it once about half an hour ago, just so the crackling forms much more evenly. I can see how good that crackling looks through our vent. I'll show you in a sec, but before we do that, let's recap on our crackling tips. So preparation is absolute key, making sure you've got that dry skin, making sure you're giving it at least 48 hours in the fridge uncovered. I have gotten away with 24 hours in the fridge uncovered, but I've used salt on the skin and that really helps draw the moisture out. But looking at this epic pork crackling we've got here, I think I'm gonna favor the extra dry time in the fridge, non-salted, because seriously, that looks amazing. Make sure you get some quality pork and then high indirect heat. Now, I know in these kettle style barbecues, you can really struggle to get that high indirect heat. A well insulated barbecue that produces a lot of radiant heat like a Kamado works absolutely perfect. So if you're using a kettle style barbecue and you've got a slow and sear, make sure that whole charcoal basket is filled up with good quality, red hot ashed over charcoal or good quality briquettes. Or if you don't have a slow and sear, then the old 2 raging hot charcoal baskets either side of the pork belly always does the trick. We've done that in one of our previous videos. I'll put that link down in the description if you did want to check that one out. And if for whatever reason you can't get your heat high enough, don't be afraid to get your pork belly out once it's had that smoke treatment. Put it under the grill, put it in your air fryer. Don't waste too much time trying to build your crackling in there if it's not working. If it hasn't started forming after a good half an hour to 45 minutes, get it out and try something else with it. But when you're trying to build that crackling, high indirect heat is absolutely key. So now we've spoken about our crackling tips, let's have a look at this. Well, would you have a look at that? You can see that light bubbly looking crackling. That's exactly what the jaccard does. So let's get this out. We'll get it onto our cutting bench and let's cut it up. Seriously, this looks and smells amazing. You've got that light, bubbly crackling. You can just bite through it with ease. You're not going to break your teeth on it. And that beautiful, tender, flavoursome meat. Doesn't get much better than that. All right, so now I've had a taste. I'll show you how I'm going to serve it up. All right, so I don't have everything for it, but I'm going to make a Vietnamese roll. I know I'm missing quite a few ingredients, but we're just working with what I've got, so don't go hating on me in the comments. Just going to lay down a generous amount of Kewpie mayo. We'll spread that in. Then I'm going to lay down some fresh cucumber. Then I've diced the pork belly up a little bit smaller, so we'll chuck some of this in there. Top it off with some pickled carrot. And we'll finish it with some red chilli. That's going to be nice, crunchy, fresh, and zingy. Let's get stuck into it. Well, that was so tasty. I couldn't be happier with how that pork belly came out. That's going to be the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Make sure you check Chris's channel out too. Like I said, I'll put links down in the description for it. So thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.